Hey there! Today we're talking about something I'm guessing a lot of you have felt, that crazy anxiety when you try to speak a new language. You know, that tongue-tied feeling? We're going to dive into what it is and, more importantly, what we can actually do about it.
So let's just start with this. You've been there, right? You've studied the vocab, you know the grammar inside and out, but the second you have to actually speak, your mind just goes completely blank. Poof. It's so frustrating, but you should know it is a super common thing for language learners.
Well, that whole experience, it actually has a name. We're calling it the tongue-tied feeling for a reason. And trust me, it's way more than just being a little nervous.
Okay, so the official term is language anxiety. And what that really means is that cocktail of fear, nerves, and just real emotional discomfort that hits you when you're trying to speak another language. And it's especially bad when you're put on the spot, right? And listen, this is so important. It is not just in your head. That feeling of your brain just short-circuiting, that's a real physical thing. The research is clear. Anxiety can literally hit the brakes on your memory, mess with your concentration, and even get in the way of physically forming the words. So yeah, when you forget a word you absolutely know you know, that's what's happening.
Okay, so we get what it is, but the big question is, why? Why does this happen? Where is all this anxiety really coming from? Let's dig into the main causes.
Well, the research points to a handful of usual suspects. It often kicks off with low self-esteem, which then gets cranked up to 11 by a massive fear of making mistakes. Then you throw in the stress of not having all the words you need, and yeah, it's a perfect storm. But you know what the real driver is behind all this? It's that fear of being judged by your teacher, your friends, anyone who's listening.
And the result of all that fear? It's pretty serious. This quote just nails it. As a result, they choose silence over participation even when they understand the lesson. Think about that. It's not about not knowing the material. It's about being so afraid that you just shut down. And that silence, it becomes this huge wall that stops you from actually learning and getting better.
All right, so this is a real problem, and it has some pretty big consequences. But here's the good news. Researchers have been all over this, looking for what actually helps. So let's see what a massive deep dive into the research tells us about what really works.
To figure this out, the study we're diving into here did a huge systematic review. And when I say huge, I am not kidding. Their first search for studies on this topic, it pulled up over 4 million articles.
But obviously they didn't look at all 4 million. They were super strict. They wanted only the best of the best, the highest quality, peer-reviewed studies that looked specifically at speaking anxiety. And get this, out of those 4 million plus results, only 15, just 15, met their standards. That's how focused they were.
And this wasn't just a quick look either. This review covered decades of research, all the way from 1991 up to 2025. So we're getting a really solid long-term view of the evidence here.
So after all that incredibly careful work, what did those 15 gold standard studies actually find? Well, they all pointed in the same direction, toward very specific, practical things you can do in a classroom to build confidence instead of creating fear.
And the research shows a clear winner. It's all about moving from a teacher-centered classroom to a student-centered one. Think about it. In the old school way, the focus is on being perfect, and any mistake is treated like a problem. But in a student-centered classroom, the goal is just to communicate. Mistakes aren't just okay. They're seen as a totally normal, even essential part of learning.
So what does that actually look like? How do you create that kind of space? Well, the research points to a few key things. Getting students to talk with each other in pairs or small groups, that immediately lowers the pressure. Having class discussions, doing fun role plays, working together on tasks. See the pattern? It's all about getting students talking to each other. The goal becomes communication, not perfection.
And you know what? Technology can be a huge ally here. Digital tools can give learners a way to find their voice. It's a really simple but powerful three-step thing. First, you just practice. Record yourself speaking on your phone, audio or video, whatever. Step 2, you reflect. You listen back, but there's no social pressure, no one's watching you in real time. And then, step 3, you build that confidence. You can re-record, notice your own improvement, and build up your skills on your own terms.
All right, let's start to wrap this up. We've talked about the problem, we've looked at what the best research says, and we've explored some real solutions. It's all about that journey from staying silent to actually speaking up.
And if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. The goal isn't to get rid of anxiety completely. I mean, that's probably not going to happen for most of us, right? The real goal, the one we can actually achieve, is to stop that anxiety from shutting learners down. It's about creating a space where they can find their voice and speak up, even if their hands are a little shaky.
And that really brings us to a much bigger idea, and a final question I want to leave you with. This isn't just about language class. It applies everywhere. How can we, in our schools, in our jobs, in our communities, how can we build spaces where every single person, no matter how nervous they are, feels safe enough to be heard?